what's up you guys? This is Gabby and I am back with another video. What are we going to talk about today? In this video, we are going to talk about my experience as a case manager. As you guys all know, I specialize in macro social work right now. I got my MSW degree, and the track I specialized in was macro social work, community health, and urban development. However, I think a solid master's program in social work is going to give you the exposure in both direct practice as well as macro, and that is what my social work program provided for me. So during my first year, I took classes focused on general social work, foundation of social work, and I got the opportunity to have an internship that was direct practice focused. For this internship, I was a case manager and I worked for a workforce development program. So basically this program was geared towards young adults who may have had some issues in the past or barriers that prevented them from getting into a decent paying job that could help them to live a good quality of life. So in my role, I was supporting young adults and making sure that their outside barriers were taken care of and that they were connected to the resources necessary so that they could excel in their workforce development program and successfully land a job at the end of their time in the program. So I had a caseload of about 18 students. I was only doing case management work for about 3 days out of the week because I was a student at the time. I was, in my master's program, and this is kind of how the internship was structured. Although maybe a caseload of 18 doesn't sound that extreme when given the amount of time that I was at my job for only 3 days a week, it was kind of a lot. So one thing I really liked about being a case manager was that I was able to build strong relationships with my clients. I was able to learn a lot about what made them them. I was able to, learn about their history, and I was able to help them in a deep way with facing some of the challenges that they may have been struggling with. So I worked with students who had issues with community violence. So one of the clients in my caseload was struggling with depression and anxiety because her brother was killed during a senseless act of violence. And another one of my clients was struggling with homelessness. I also had several clients that had criminal records and who was, trying to get on the straight and narrow, but maybe was having some issues with, staying away from the activities that got them in trouble in the past. It was definitely a challenging experience. I think when you're working so directly with people, burnout is a real thing. It's very likely, and that's definitely something that I felt myself dealing with. I feel like when you're a social worker and you're a part of a multidisciplinary team, such as if you're working at a hospital or a school setting, kind of like me, when you're working in these environments with people from other professions, like I was working with teachers and advisors, anything that is out of the scope of what they can manage or what they understand, they expect you to deal with that issue and to help the students to deal with that issue. So I would have to get comfortable with wearing multiple hats and help my students with situations that I had no prior knowledge about, no deep understanding about at all. Like, for example, as I mentioned before, some of the students that I worked with had, a criminal record for one reason or another. So, the full role of this program was to make sure that they could get into a full-time job at the end of the program. So I was tasked with helping my students to get their records expunged. And, I'm not a lawyer. I don't have this type of understanding. I've never done this before. So as a case manager, you really have to be prepared to take on challenges that you didn't see coming and that you don't have any prior experience or knowledge about. And as a case manager, I think it's really important for you to have a good foundational understanding about counseling and in different counseling techniques. Especially if you are practicing case management as a social worker. This is super important. As I mentioned, one of my students was dealing with the recent death of her brother, and me being her case manager, she really was expecting me to, lend an ear and to not, solve all of her problems with anxiety and depression, but to at least help her to cope in some kind of way, provide her with some coping mechanisms to get through the day and still come to the program and succeed. Now, I did end up referring her out to an actual therapist who could see her on a regular basis and provide her with actual mental health treatment. But since she was in my caseload, I was seeing her on a very regular basis, more than her therapist. So it was very important for me to at least understand and know how to implement the basics of therapy and counseling. Asking open-ended questions, giving her the platform to speak freely, not giving her advice, but leading her to thinking through and figuring out the answers for herself. And also, as I mentioned, providing her with different coping mechanisms and strategies that could help her with coping with such a tragic loss that she had to deal with. So nothing extreme, but it really is important to at least understand, like I said before, the basics of therapeutic practices. As a case manager, it's really important for you to understand the ecosystem of support that exists in your community and your city, because as I mentioned, you're going to work with people who have all kinds of issues, and they're going to be looking for you to put them in touch with the right people and to provide them with the right resources. One of the students in my caseload was a new parent, and she didn't have anyone in her support system who could take care of her child while she was in the program. And it was my job to do the research and to have a strong understanding around the different daycare providers located near her and which ones were able to provide income assistance for parents who had a lower income. When you're doing case management, you're working with people who oftentimes have a lower income, so it's important for you to know how to connect them to different food assistance programs, temporary housing programs, daycare assistance, basically any resource that can help them to better sustain themselves. If you are a case manager and your job doesn't already have a resource guide for, different resources that you can provide for the individuals in your case, it is totally important for you to develop that resource guide. Think about all of the different topics of assistance that your clients may need given the population that you work with, and start doing your research and asking other colleagues for recommendations and building out a resource guide that you can go to when you have a client that's in need of something. And it's also important for your resource guide to take in consideration different sides of the city, right? Because if you have, let's say you live in a big city and you need a resource that can provide you with business clothes, you don't want to send someone who lives way on the west side to this resource that's located, in the far east side, because as I mentioned before, you're most likely going to be working with people with a lower income when you're a case manager. So you have to think about the cost of getting from one place to the next. So you want to limit the amount of time and the amount of money they have to put towards transportation, if at all possible. That's definitely the goal. As I mentioned, my first year of grad school, my internship was being a case manager, but my second year, it was a very macro level internship. So I wasn't working directly with people. I was doing work similar to what I do now. And I do have to say that I really did miss that aspect of connecting one-on-one with people once I moved on to the more macro level internship. Even though it is stressful at times, and you're gonna hear about a lot of, situations and instances that your clients are involved in that are pretty sad. And if you're an empathetic person, which most case managers are, right? It's just kind of the nature of the job. you may take some of this home. Of course, you have to practice self-care and you have to have your own coping strategies as well. But my point is, despite all of the stress that comes along with doing case management, I still missed helping people on that one-on-one level, because you can really see the change that you're making, and it gives you a sense of satisfaction when you connect a client to a resource and they come back to you the following week and say, hey, I took advantage of that resource and it really did help me out a lot. Thank you so much. Seeing the impact in such a direct way is definitely something that you don't get from macro social work. The change you make is not always as tangible. And in macro social work, you're not always able to directly talk to and get to know the people that you're helping or serving. Okay, you guys, so we have to touch on the important thing that everyone's thinking about, right? When it comes to case management, how's the pay? Just as you may suspect, oftentimes in case management, you're really not making that much money. I was an intern for a portion of my time working for this program, but actually after my internship ended, I ended up working full time with the program, and I was not paid very well at all. At the time I was a student, and it was great. Like, it was good for me. I loved having the extra income, but it just wasn't a lot of money, you guys. And this is something that I've talked to other social work friends about who focus on case management, and I can pretty much confirm that it is true that when you're doing case management work, you really don't make a lot of money. It depends on what type of work you're doing, what agency you're working for, but I would say that that is really the negative about doing case management. But for some people, this is their calling, and they were put on this earth to help people going through hard times, and it's great. And even though they're not making a lot of money, they're able to still enjoy doing case management, and they get a lot out of it, and the benefits of it outweigh the cons and the fact that they may not make a lot of money. But this is something to keep in mind if you are considering a case management job. Having your LCSW, your LSW will be helpful with making sure that you can get more money. So if you are going to focus on case management, after you get your social work degree, I would say that it's probably a good idea for you to explore getting your license. But it's really important to have boundaries when you're doing case management. Make sure that you understand that you can't be the savior for everyone and that you don't have all the answers, and be open to learning more and admitting, hey, I don't know, but I can help you to figure it out. Because as I mentioned before, you are expected to provide a lot as a case manager. So don't be hard on yourself, and definitely don't think that you have to know everything. Definitely take advantage of your managers, because they are there to help you to navigate sticky situations that you may not be comfortable with navigating on your own. Because as a case manager, you will come in contact with some very surprising situations. I mean, you're dealing directly with people, and people are very confusing. They're very messy. The lives of people can be very, very messy. You honestly have to go into work expecting anything. But that's also something that's super cool about case management work. One day is never going to be the same as the next. And sometimes you're gonna think that you have helped your client to overcome a certain challenge, just to later figure out that that client is actually going through the same issues that they were before, even though you guys have put in hours and hours and hours of time trying to, get past those issues. So as I mentioned before, you're working with humans, you're dealing with humans, so there's going to be a lot of gray area. And don't take too much fault if you feel like your client is not growing fast enough or progressing fast enough. Everyone's at their own pace, and everyone really does have to learn for themselves, and also they have to be ready for change. There's nothing you can really do to push them in a certain direction All you can do is be the support system, encourage them to go in a different direction, provide them with the resources, the motivation, and the support. But at the end of the day, the people that you work with are their own individuals, and they have to take steps towards change for themselves. So, all right, this was just a quick video on my experience working in case management. If anyone else has a different experience than me, or if you want to share anything else for other people who may be looking for tips or, more understanding about what the life of a case manager looks like, please leave all that in the comment section below. Make sure you like this video, and also give me some recommendations on other topics that you would like me to talk about, because I really want to make sure I'm making content that you guys actually want and find beneficial. But on that note, I will talk to you guys later, and thank you so much for watching.